Let's go live now. Israel's Defence Force International Spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus joins us. This explosion at the hospital, Israel says that it has come from a misfire within Gaza. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Good morning. It's a sad story watching the report, and it is a sad situation in Gaza. I will answer the question about the hospital, but I just want to say that all of this could have been avoided had Hamas not attacked Israel and butchered our civilians. But it is sad to see what's happening in Gaza. Responsibility lies on Hamas for that one. Regarding the hospital, we have done a thorough and quick investigation of the events. And based on our intelligence, various sources of intelligence, our conclusion is that this was in fact a rocket that was fired by another terrorist organization called the Islamic Jihad that misfired, exploded partially in the air, apparently, and then landed on or near the hospital. It was not an Israeli strike, and we did not strike in the area, and we categorically deny any claims by Hamas or anybody else that this was an Israeli strike.
So you say a thorough and quick investigation has been done. Intelligence says it was from Islamic Jihad. Will you provide evidence, the evidence that the IDF has seen?
Yes, it will be shared. We understand the sensitivity and the interest, and we understand how our enemies in Gaza and outside of it will try to leverage this event. So therefore, there will be intelligence shared by us, proof, both visual and audio. The audio part will be a conversation between different terrorists, one from the Hamas and perhaps one from another organization, where they themselves, unknowing that they're being listened to, acknowledge the fact that that appears to have been a misfire. And we're also going to release aerial footage of the area before and I think during the explosion.
Jonathan, how can this be verified? I know it's supplied by Israeli intelligence, but is there, and this is the fog of war type stuff, and you understand the sensitivities around this. So once we see, and when are we going to see this evidence, by the way, in the next couple of hours?
Yes, it will be imminent. And, if we speak about verifying information, much has been said, including in the excellent story that was just shown to the viewers before. But a lot of what was said, I don't think that was independently verified, because the reporting here as well is taking information by Hamas, disseminated by Hamas, and it's taking that as fact and at face value. The amount of casualties that you reported, perhaps 800, I don't know that that has been verified by an independent source that isn't Hamas. And I don't know that the cause of the explosion has been verified. I think that many people, journalists, have been very fast to immediately say that this explosion, calling it an attack and blaming Israel for it, which I think is premature and frankly not really professional. In times of war, any information by any party to a conflict should be treated with caution. And many times I find myself being held to a very high standard, like show us pictures of beheaded babies, and if you don't show us pictures of beheaded babies, then they weren't beheaded. Yet when Hamas just says that there were hundreds of casualties, that is taken at face value.
Well, if your intelligence is able to determine that it did come from a rocket misfire inside Gaza from Islamic Jihad, can your intelligence also give us a better idea of how many are dead within that hospital?
Rest assured that we are focusing quite a lot of sensors exactly on that, because if there is foul play here afoot, then we would want to expose it. If the numbers of casualties are inflated, and if Hamas is bringing in combatants, their military combatants from the organizations, and mixing them up with the numbers, we will most likely find out sooner or later. And if the numbers don't add up, then we will say so if we have intelligence that supports it. But in the meanwhile, what I think that everyone should exercise is professional caution and not claim that it was immediately an Israeli attack and a missile strike.
Fair enough, but if I could put this counterpoint to you, it is very dangerous for journalists to be operating inside Gaza at the moment. There is no access for Sky News journalists at the moment. They're relying on teams within Gaza, and journalists have been killed in Israeli airstrikes in the last couple of days. So what can you provide in terms of protection for independent journalists so we can have a clearer picture?
Yes, the situation is dangerous and there have been casualties. I'm aware of that. Of course, not intentional. In Israel, we allow journalists almost unfettered access to all of Israel, wherever it doesn't, include exposing troops and anything related to operational security. Sure. In Israel, where we are responsible, we allow transparency and lots of access to everything so that reporters can do their job, ask us for information, and then verify it with their own eyes. The situation in Gaza is different. It is governed by Hamas, and Hamas has a long history of silencing journalism and silencing reports that aren't convenient for them. For instance, when there's rocket fire from within a house or close to a UN school, and if the reporters report on it, they are silenced afterwards. And there's many accounts of this by former journalists who have said that I was either brutalized or threatened by Hamas. And we know that this is ongoing.
Without being on the ground and without being able to verify this, Jonathan, from this big picture view, you'd agree, surely, that the death toll that we have seen from this particular hospital overnight is not what you would normally associate with a missile from Hamas rockets. Would you agree?
I think it's preliminary to assess that. There can be all kinds of combustible material in a hospital. There could have been a secondary explosion that's being investigated by us now, and I hope that there are other organizations and people that are investigating on the ground in Gaza, and I hope that they'll be able to share what and if they find. What I can say categorically, that there was no Israeli strike, that it was a rocket that misfired, and importantly, that the rocket wasn't intercepted by us. I've been asked by others, was the rocket perhaps intercepted by the IDF and therefore exploded and fell to the ground? No, we did not intercept. We do not intercept, and not in this case either. We do not intercept rockets over Gaza. So that can be laid to rest as well.
You said intelligence would be working to clarify the number of dead in this particular explosion. And then I think what you said to me, I don't want to put words in your mouth, you said you would try to counter any inflated numbers of the dead. Why would you be concerned about that if this did come from Islamic Jihad, a mistaken attack on their own?
We are concerned because we see the ramifications, the regional ramifications of each and every event in Gaza. And we know that Hamas tries to manipulate information and to portray a false image to the world. We have very solid information that suggests that they were behind the casualty event, the strike on a convoy of Palestinians that were moving south, evacuating, and then there were mysterious explosions and Palestinians were killed. Hamas immediately blamed us for it. We looked into it, cross-referenced, and saw that we in fact had not struck anything in that area at the specific time. We're talking about afternoon hours on Friday, last Friday. And we know that Hamas wants to use events on the ground, leverage them in international media, and try to garner either support or to whip up some kind of frenzy or incitement against Israel. This is the modus operandi of Hamas. We are fighting it, but we, unlike Hamas, are held to standards of a modern country where we have to prove what we say and not only say it. And I think it is regrettable that there's this kind of pattern, not necessarily on your network, but this kind of pattern where reports coming out of Gaza, the Gaza or Hamas saying, and then that becomes the headline. And then we have to prove that that's a lie. And I think that is very, very unfortunate because they are not truthful.
Yes, the burden does fall on Israel's shoulders, but in the fog of war, we need as much information as you can give, and it seems that we can get it from the Israeli Defence Force. You say that this evidence will be provided in the next couple of hours. That will come in the form of audio and video. Can I just get an assurance from you on AM Agenda this morning that once we do see this evidence, you will give every opportunity for Western media and Western allies to be able to verify that?
Of course. We already did a press statement or a press Q&A session. The Israeli Defense Forces spokesperson, Rear Admiral Hagari, he gave an on-record statement to journalists and answered questions. He showed them UAV footage and he told them about the recording and that it's going to be released. And more than that, American counterparts are already aware of the information, and I'm sure that they will see it soon. So we understand the magnitude of the event here. We understand how the enemy will try to blow this into a totally different dimension, this event, and we are going to show evidence that supports our claims that it was in fact a rocket that misfired and not an Israeli strike.
Can mistakes be made in war? You know, is there a chance that Israel has made mistakes, have struck the wrong targets, and that might happen again in the next couple of weeks?
As I'm sure that Australian armed forces have also learned in combat, Americans, Brits, French, anybody who's been in combat knows that, yes, mistakes are made. Sometimes targets that are not intended to be struck are struck. Sometimes things are misidentified, and sometimes there's wrong information, and many other things happen. That's why it's called the fog of war, because a lot happens at the same time while you're trying to make sense of it. We aspire to do the right thing. We aspire to target only Hamas. We're not looking to strike civilians. Unfortunately, yes, in the past, and I think that in the future, mistakes will happen, but we aspire for them to be minimal, and they are never intentional. There are mistakes. And I'd ask that we are held to the same standards that any other Western military is, while fighting terrorists that are embedded in urban terrain, using civilians as their human shields. That's the only thing we ask. And
just to make sure no one can misconstrue your last answer, Jonathan, the mistakes that you speak of does not include a mistaken strike on that hospital.
Very clear. As I've said many times, that was, according to our intelligence, an Islamic Jihad rocket that misfired and caused that explosion.
Jonathan Conricus, live there from Tel Aviv. Appreciate your time.